Welcome, everyone, to the VBC Bible Institute and podcast, and welcome back to our course, Journey Through the Bible, where we're literally going. This is almost turning into a verse-by-verse study of the Bible. No, not exactly a verse-by-verse study of the entire Bible, but we are trying to work our way through the entire Bible. And in our last session, we were in Genesis 10. I gave you some assignments. I'm not going to go back. I'm not going to repeat what those assignments were. Go back and listen. And remember, if you are actively participating, please check in, all right? If you're actively participating, then please check in. You need to check in soon. Email me at newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. Tell me that you're still studying. Tell me where you are. Tell me what you're doing. Tell me what you're accomplishing. Let me know where you're at. Let me know how you're doing. It's definitely time to check in. If you are not actively participating, and when I say active, in other words, you're doing the assignment, sending them to me, you may be actively participating, but more in a passive way. And what I mean by that, you're not emailing me, you're not contacting me, you're not sending me the work. That's perfectly okay. I would still like to at least let you know, I would at least like to know that you're out there, right? I would like to know, like, you don't have to send me your work, but just let me know who you are, maybe, where you're listening from, how you're listening. Because we want to measure the effectiveness of what we're trying to do. This requires a lot of work. I'm not getting paid for this, right? I mean, the podcast is not monetized, so I'm not getting any money for this, right? I'm not charging anyone for any of this. This is just, I'm doing this above and beyond all the other things I'm doing. I'm doing this above and beyond the preaching I do for Victory Baptist Church. I'm doing this above and beyond the Theology Central podcast. I'm doing this above and beyond the non-Catholic Catholic podcast. So this requires, a lot of work, and probably I bit off more than I can actually chew. Probably, I don't know if I'm going to ever be able to completely accomplish this, but I'm just going to keep doing the best I can. And of course, you letting me know that you're out there and that you're benefiting and telling me what you need or what would be helpful, that would be great, because that motivates me to really jump in. I'm going to try to find a time. I don't know when, but I'm going to, we'll see. I mean, the COVID situation, to be honest with you, the COVID situation has really messed everything up, because it really changed the whole dynamic for church, which moved everything to kind of podcasting, because I was going to use a lot of the, like the Sunday school hour, maybe Wednesday nights for the VBC Bible Institute to kind of really, add to the amount of teaching. But so, none of that is your concern. Your concern is simply this. Your concern is that I provide you, hopefully, some good instruction, and I'm giving you assignments that are benefiting you. I'm not giving you assignments for busy work. I'm giving you assignments to really get you into the scriptures, and you're going to get another assignment in this episode. Now, in chapter 10, I just kind of gave you the assignments, and we moved on. But in chapter 11, I'm going to give you assignments, and we're going to come back and do some work on chapter 11, because I think chapter 11 is very, 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 very relevant to all of us. And I think that we need to give it a lot of consideration. But let's just jump in, all right? The first thing when we get to Genesis chapter 11, that we have to ask ourselves, this is a very important question. And in fact, well, if you were here in front of me today, right, here in this building, if you were here on this Sunday afternoon, I'm doing this broadcast on a Sunday afternoon. If we were all sitting at a table, or if you were sitting in the pew and I was doing the lecture from the pulpit, I would say, okay, students, what is the very first thing we have to figure out about Genesis chapter 11? What is the very first thing we have to figure out? What is the answer, right? I would want you to give me the answer, and it would be interesting to know who would raise their hand. Maybe it's someone in Ohio. Maybe it's someone in Tennessee. Maybe it's someone in Fort Worth, Texas. I don't know all the different places people listening. Saudi Arabia, we get a lot of listens from there. Wherever you may be, it would be interesting to know what people would say, because there is something we need to figure out about Genesis chapter 11, and it may not be what you think. So I can't hear your answers. I'm just trying to guess what some of the answers could be, but I'm not even I won't even go there. This is what you have to figure out. The very first thing you have to figure out about Genesis chapter 11. Are you ready? Is Genesis chapter 11 in the right place? What do I mean by that? Well, there is some argument that Genesis 11 should actually be where Genesis 10 is, and Genesis 10 should be where Genesis 11 is. And here's the reason why. In Genesis chapter 11, you probably know the story, but just to make it simple, the end result of what happens in Genesis chapter 11, especially in verses 1 through 8, is this. Therefore is the name of it called Babel, because the Lord did there confound the language of all the earth, and from thence did the Lord scatter them abroad upon the face of all the earth. So Genesis 11 is supposedly kind of an origin story, right? It tells us the origin of how we end up with basically people scattered around the face of the earth speaking different languages. How did the languages get confounded? How do we end up with different languages? Well, Genesis 11 seems to indicate this is the origin of it. However, if you go back to Genesis chapter 10, know what happens in Genesis chapter 10, verse 5. Genesis chapter 10, verse 5. But these were the isles of the Gentiles, divided in their lands, everyone after his tongue, after their families, and their nations. That's scattered. That's different languages. Look at Genesis chapter 10. That's Genesis 10, verse 5. Look at Genesis chapter 10, verse 20. Genesis chapter 10, verse 20. These are the sons of Ham, after their families, after their tongues, in their countries, and in their nations. Look at verse 31. Genesis chapter 10, verse 31. These are the sons of Shem, after their families, after their tongues, in their lands, after their nations. Then verse 32, these are the families of the sons of Noah, after their generations, in their nations. By these were the nations divided in the earth after the flood. So it appears after the flood, people are divided into different groups and different tongues, different languages. Well, wait a minute. Genesis 11 seems to indicate, in fact, if you look at it, Genesis 11, verse 1, and the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. Wait, how can they all be of one language and one speech? Now, either you have Genesis 10, everyone's divided, everyone's speaking a different language, then all the people come together to speak in one language, and then everything has to be divided again. I don't know. One commentary states it this way. It is likely that the events in chapter 11 occurred prior to those in chapter 10, and that the scattering described in chapter 10 was the consequence of God's judgment at Babel. Perhaps the story was placed here in Genesis so it could lead into the genealogy of Shem, which leads into the genealogy of Abraham, the founder of the Hebrew nation. The argument then is literary and not chronological. So there's a good chance that 10 and 11 are not organized in a chronological order. They're in a literary order. They've set this up to specifically lead into those genealogies. But the reality is the chapter should actually come before Genesis 10, and Genesis 10 shows the consequence of what happened at the Tower of Babel. It's a consequence of God's judgment. All right? This seems to be very, very clear. And if you think about where we are in Genesis, just a reminder, we've had some very important events described, right? We had the fall described. Once again, God giving instruction, men not following that instruction. Then there is judgment. And then even though there's judgment, there's grace. There is grace demonstrated. So we have that. We had the flood. Again, we had God giving instructions, people disobeying those instructions. We had sin. We had judgment, but we saw God's grace being demonstrated. All right. So we have a kind of a theme in a lot of these events that are happening. Even with Cain and Abel, you have the example of God giving them instructions. They're not following those instructions. Then there's judgment. But God's grace is seen. And here we come to another event where there's going to be instruction, there's going to be a rebellion against that instruction, and there's going to be judgment. But I think there's a high probability that Genesis 11 should go before Genesis 10. I think there at least is an argument to be made, all right? And you can consider that. At least you want you to be aware of that. But let's go to Genesis chapter 10, all right? So there's the first thing that you really need to consider. Is it out of place? And I think that there's a possibility. Here's the second thing I want you to consider, all right? Everyone focuses. Let's just go to Genesis chapter 11. Let's just focus on. I want you to see something I think is very important. Genesis chapter 11. And the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. And it came to pass as they journeyed from the east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. Now, that's very significant, especially if you remember back to Genesis chapter 10. And if you remember one of your assignments. Right, you had an assignment to study someone by the name of Nimrod, and if you note that the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, right, and it says the beginning of his kingdom was Babel. Then they give you a look at Genesis 10:10. The beginning of his kingdom was Babel. They name another of places, and look in the land of Shinar, in the land of Shinar. So this is Nimrod and his kingdom. So now all the people are of one language and of one speech, and it came to pass that as they journeyed from the east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. So these people end up in basically Nimrod's kingdom. They end up there. All right, this is somewhat significant because that's why I told you to study Nimrod, right? Okay. Now, look here. Look at verse 3. And they said one to another, "Go to, let us make brick and burn them thoroughly." And they had bricks for stone and slime they had for mortar. And they said, "Go, let us build us a city and a tower." Now, we always talk about the tower, right? We always talk about the Tower of Babel. We talk about this tower and all of the discussions about it. But I think we sometimes miss that it wasn't just a tower. It was a city and a tower. And this city, I think, is of great significance. Let me read to you how the Nelson's New Illustrated Bible Dictionary speaks of this. The climax of the story occurs when the city is identified with Babel, the Hebrew name for Babylonia. So this begins to connect a city with the tower. The Tower of Babel is connected to the city of Babylon. And the city of Babylon is of great significance, and Babylonia, these two things are of great significance to any Bible student. Anyone's going to read the Bible. Babylon is going to show up countless times throughout the Old Testament. And clearly it's going to show up in the New Testament. In fact, when you get to the end of when you're getting chapter 18, chapter 19 of the book of Revelation, Babylon's going to show up again. So this is the origin, really, not only is this the origin of how we end up with different languages and people scattered, this is the origin of Babylon. Nimrod, his kingdom, Shinar, Tower of Babel, Babylonia, Babylon. This is of great significance to any Bible student. So here's what I want you to do. Very, very simple. First, I want you to look up in any Bible dictionary, Bible encyclopedia, any reference tools you can find. If you need any help looking anything up, find all the things you can, all the references you can. Bible dictionaries, Bible encyclopedias. Now, I know you could look up like on Wikipedia, but that's not going to be of great help here, okay? Look up Bible dictionaries. Now, if you have a Bible dictionary, great. If you don't have a Bible dictionary, you really should own one. It's that simple. I know there's a lot online, but I just think you should have a physical copy. I think every Christian should have a Bible dictionary. They should, because the Bible should be a daily part of your life, and having a Bible dictionary to help look things up is of great significance. It's like it should just be required. Like it should be required. Okay, if you don't have a Bible dictionary in your home, you should be excommunicated. All right, maybe that's a little extreme, but you get the idea. All right. So look up first an entry for the Tower of Babel. For example, in the Bible dictionary that I'm holding, if I look up Babel, it's Tower of, right? And it says an ancient tower, and then it tells me what it symbolizes. I'm not going to go into that right now, all right? Okay, I'm not going to go into that right there. So I want you to look up a reference about the Tower of Babel, and I want you to write down at least 3 clear observations about the Tower of Babel, 3 things that you find in your reading. You don't have to write down everything you discovered. I want you to read it for yourself, because the goal here is your education. The goal here is not necessarily to get to just do work just because you have to do so. The key is to get you to study things, all right? So I want you to write down 3 things you'll learn about the Tower of Babel. I want you to write down 3 things, right? I think you got that. Next, I want you to look in a Bible dictionary, Bible encyclopedia, and for any entry that you can find on Babylon. Babylon. It should say something like Babylon, city of. Babylon, city of. Ancient walled city between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers and capital of the Babylonian Empire. All right? Now that's going to lead you to the third thing you're going to look up. All right? Tower of Babel, 3 things that you observe in your reading about the Tower of Babel. Okay, just look up any dictionary, encyclopedia, whatever. You can use Theopedia. Is it Theopedia? Let me look at it really quick. It's pretty decent. Theopedia. Yeah, Theopedia. That's Theopedia, Theopedia.com. Theopedia, Theopedia. And then you can use that. That will be somewhat helpful. You can go to Bible study tools. There's all kinds of places online. Trust. Here's the thing: if you can't find the resource, you email me immediately, and I will start sending you links. Okay? You tell me what you need, and I'll help you. All right. So find a Bible dictionary, Bible encyclopedia. Find and look up multiple sources about the Tower of Babel, and write down 3 observations. Then do the same with Babylon. But for Babylon, you can't do 3. I want 5 observations, 5 things you learn about Babylon. Why? Why 3 for the Tower of Babel and 5 for Babylon? I think it's pretty obvious. Tower of Babel is referenced just a few times. Obviously, Babylon is all over the Bible. So give me some 5 I want some good observations on the Tower of Babylon. 5. And then, so you got Tower of Babel, you got Babylon. And then the third thing you need to do for your assignment is look up let's see here. Babylonia. Yeah, Babylonia. Babylonia, because, and here's what happens. You've got the Tower of Babel, you've got Babylon, and then Babylonia. This is what the Bible dictionary says: ancient pagan empire between the Tigris and Euphrates River in southern Mesopotamia. The Babylonians struggled with the neighboring Assyrians, and then et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you have a lot here about the Babylonia. But here's what I want you to do. 3 observations on the Tower of Babel, 5 observations on Babylon, and 3 on Babylonia. So 3, 5, 3. 3, 5, 3. 3 on the Tower of Babel, 5 observations on Babylon, and 3 on Babylonia. There you have it. 3, 5, 3. Now, why am I having you do this? Because look, do you want to learn the Bible or do you not want to? You're going to be studying, you're going to be coming across Babylon over and over and over. So that's why I'm having you do this. That's why I'm having you look these things up and getting you studying so that you will actually know the scriptures. All right. Now you could sit back and passively listen to me, but then that's not a Bible Institute. That's just a sermon. Right? You could just listen to me lecture. Again, that's a podcast. This is a Bible Institute /podcast. Now, I'm going to do some teaching on the Tower of Babel, but definitely going to. But I want you to see what you can discover and all of that. Okay? There you have it. There's your assignment on Genesis chapter 11. 3 observations on the Tower of Babel, 5 observations on Babylon, 3 observations on Babylonia. Right? Look, Bible dictionaries, like I've got a Bible dictionary right here in front of me, okay? Members of Victory Baptist Church, if you're participating, all you got to do is come up here to the church and grab a Bible dictionary. They're all over the place. Grab them, use it, just bring the Bible dictionary back, okay? But there you have it. So jump in, dig in, start working, and let me know what you discover. I think it's very, very important. There's some other things I wanted you to do and drawing some contrast, but I'm not going to have you do that right now. All right, I'm not going to have you do that right now. So we'll have you're going to have a topical study that you're going to need to do. You're going to have a topical study that you're going to need to do, but we'll get to that topical study later. All right, there you have it. Email me at newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. That's newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. And I'll be more than happy to help you as you study the Bible. All right, there you have it. All right, I look forward to hearing from you. God bless.